How do you get cobwebs off a microphone? Good evening, everybody, and welcome. And why are we not on screen? That's a very interesting thing that I'm looking at. There we go. All right.
Oh, I'll take care of that.
You know what it is? It's all the alcohol Bill had last night for this huge party at his. It was a raver. That was one of those things that when you're young like Bill, you can still do that.
Those
Good evening.
UFO people know how to tie one on. Let me tell you.
Yeah, shooting star. Anyway, guys. Good evening and welcome to Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. We are simulcasting with KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube and on Facebook. We are back after last week, the hiatus for the holiday, and I hope you all had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Did you do anything, Ken, during that time?
Not a darn thing. A little bit of a cookout, but at my age, we don't buy green bananas, so a couple of burgers is the extent of my wildness at this point. So, but it's all good.
Yeah, you don't want to pull a muscle doing anything at your age. I
No,
understand that part of it.
no,
Very special guest joining us tonight, Michelle Belanger. And gentlemen, let me tell you something, and ladies, this is going to be one of those shows you don't want to miss. Lecturer, author. This is a energy vampire. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into some very, very serious topics and controversial topics tonight with her. And we're so gracious to have her. And we may even open up the phones in the second half of the show. So sit back with your favorite beverage, relax, and thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to hit that thumbs up to show us how much you enjoy the content of what we're doing, and the reminder bell. All very important for our show and for Full Spectrum. Why am I getting the feedback now? I just noticed that. Anyway, we'll try and get through that as well. Technical difficulty. You know what it is? It's just everything. This whole system, StreamYard, everybody took a break. So, but we're coming
everybody's
back
got
in.
an air conditioner on now, so you've got this energy, you got this grid. Speaking of energy, vampirism, we're sucking our electric grid dry out here, but went all the
Well,
way up to 80 degrees today, so we're like, we got to live in an ice box now.
at least you're
Well,
not
I
in
just want to
Texas.
say, welcome back to all the viewers, too. You took the weekend. I hope you appreciated us giving you guys a week off.
Yeah, I swear to God, you guys, we miss a week, and you think at that point in time, we're going to lose the ratings, and you guys come right back, popping right back with us, and thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to check something real quick, Ken. I'm just putting you on mute for a second, and yes, the feedback is gone, so it's coming from your end. So once we bring our guest on, and you and I flip flop, and that should be out of the way. But that's probably again just a accent off of your microphone. We'll fix that. No worries about that. Hey, so you didn't do much during that time frame. I watched the entire first half because they took a little break in between of season 4 of Stranger Things.
Good for you.
And anybody out there who's been watching it and said, "Yeah, monsters, okay, 80s I like, but it's not a this new season took a turn to the dark side and very much more in the realm of the paranormal. It's more of a horror film than supernatural. I think that it's probably the best season so far. I've talked to a couple of other people who agree. So if you are, let us know in the chat if you've been watching it, what you think. So that was my time frame. Besides the ongoing situation, Ken, with the pop saga, which still continues, but scheduled to come home hopefully by this weekend and be out of the hospital and be done with that. So
Right. Well, that's good to hear.
exactly. All right, why do not we bring our guest on at this point in time? I'm
Nah,
excited to have her join us. Ken, why don't you do the honor, sir?
sure, I would be more than happy to. Michelle Belanger is an American occult expert, educator, media personality, and author of over 30 books on paranormal and occult topics. She's authored over 2 dozen nonfiction books on paranormal and occult topics, has appeared on television documentaries about magic and modern occultism. She has performed as a vocalist and worked as a writer with Nox Arcana, who are described as an American neoclassical dark wave musical project. Michelle is most widely recognized for her work as a psychic on A&E's Paranormal State and Osborne Media's Portals to Hell. She's also lectured on paranormal and occult topics at colleges and universities across North America and was a National Merit Scholar, something that George and I know nothing about. A prolific and versatile creator, she has also contributed work to projects as wide-ranging as Marvel AR, HBO's True Blood, CNN Headline News, CSI, and multiple RBGs. That's role-playing games for all you oldies out there. So without further ado, we are so happy to have her with us tonight. Let's bring in Michelle Belanger.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey, it's good
how
to
are
see
you?
you. It's good to see you. I know we had you scheduled last time. You were feeling a bit under the weather, and it's good to hear that.
It was first time in a long while, and I really appreciate you guys accommodating me because I was
We were going to
the
stay
very
with
last
you.
minute where I'm like, I think I'm gonna be fine. No, I'm
Yeah.
not.
Well, we were going to stay with you at least till the restraining order came. So we figured we would have you back again.
Yeah, I'm worried about the feedback because I'm getting a lot of it, Ken. So,
What,
how do you want to
what would you
run
like
this?
me to do, George?
Get the hell out of here. Just go.
Oh,
Get
we're
some
going to
coffee.
talk later, my friend.
We'll take turns, actually, Michelle. So I
Yeah,
wanted to, uh, first of all, say it is good to see you. The last time that we saw each other, I think, was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania,
yeah, that
at
paranormal
this.
con.
Oh my God!
It was a
Somewhere,
thing.
I've got pictures somewhere, and I remember that was a crazy fun night. There was just a ton of people there, and I think Billy Zane showed up. There was because we had paranormal celebrities and we had regular celebrities. Some of the guys, Ernie Hudson from Ghost Busters was there. There was a whole bunch of people at this thing. It was gigantic, and I think the organizer is still paying it off.
Yeah, I remember even seeing Tweaky from Buck Rogers, the actor who played Tweaky.
But yep, he was. He was actually there, dressed to the nines, I think, for the party.
Yeah,
That was a wild time, though. It really was. So, thank you again for coming on with us. And I'm going to start where Ken said we shouldn't go, but it's with
okay.
regards to the paranormal. And this is your first introduction to our audience, to the KGRA audience. What had gotten you started in this field? Where did you begin your journey?
So I was born to a family that was weird to begin with. So they were first or second generation Irish American, brought a lot of stories over, definitely had a family tradition where psychic abilities traveled through the bloodline and whatnot. I was born with a heart defect, so my life expectancy was not past 5. In fact,
What?
we are right around the 45th anniversary of the final surgery that almost killed me, but actually saved my life. My final open heart surgery was just a couple of weeks after the opening of Star Wars.
And you and I were born on the same day, January 11th.
It's a pretty good
And
day, I think so.
it is. It is. Well, it's a little close to Christmas because that's when, or when you were younger. Oh, this is your Christmas and birthday present. No, no, don't do that,
Yeah,
But
and I was in Ohio, so like birthday parties were not a thing because we were always snowed in back in the day when it snowed that much.
yeah, when you had to walk uphill both ways to school in bare feet. Yeah.
Definitely that.
You tell
Uh,
kids at it today, they don't understand. They just won't deal with it.
nope.
And but it's there's a leap from having the experiences to saying, I want answers.
That was
How
also
did you get there?
something I credit to my family. So my grandmother was somebody who definitely had abilities. She was very hesitant to talk about them openly. Like they were definitely a behind closed doors thing. But she was very curious about what they meant and what they were like. And she had a high value on scholarship and academia. So she
Wow.
strongly encouraged both experiencing but also analyzing, being objective, and reading as much as I could about stuff. Her older sister was a social worker who had almost completed a psychiatry degree. She had had to stop that because their mother got sick, but she had the chops for psychology. She had a ton of her college textbooks and stuff around, and we had a lot of deep conversations about the psychological aspect of stuff. which if anybody's familiar with my approach, you kind of can't separate the psychic from the psychology aspect of what I do. I'm always analyzing this weird stuff that's going on inside my head, like how these abilities manifest and how we interpret them, and not only what they mean, but like how much our own lens colors that meaning, our experience of that. Like it's this kind of constant dialogue between us and the outside world and whatever the phenomenon is.
Bringing Michelle Belanger to the forefront of the paranormal, meaning the media side of it, was it you, such as Paranormal State, you seeking that
Mm.
part of the field, or did they seek you out based upon the research and reputation that you had?
Paranormal State folks sought me out. Now, I had started doing work
Awesome.
in the media as basically a media liaison for alternative belief groups as early as the middle 90s. So
Explain that.
I was the talking head for documentaries and news items when they were like, we think it's voodoo, we think it's vampires, we think it's this, it's the weird kids in black. I was the
Labeling.
person like, hi, I've got a degree in comparative religious studies. Here's my credentials. Let me explain to you like the sociological impact, what these people actually believe, and why these things that you're pointing at have actually nothing to do with this.
Social programming.
Yeah. So I was, I don't know. I don't want to say an activist, but I was definitely a champion for these marginalized groups, many of which I was part of. To say, okay, look, I realize that when you see an upside down cross or an upside down star scrawled on the wall, many people are going to immediately jump to demons. But also, this could just be something from an Ozzy Osbourne album. Like, seriously consider all of the options first.
It's got to put you again, not defensively in that posture, but at the same time, it's almost having to constantly justify through education, letting these individuals know who again have put it into a blanket statement, who have just stereotyped a certain category. Yeah, you're really based upon your social media experience, based upon the stories that you hear from other people. It's almost like campfire stories. You're not really
Mm.
delving enough to know the individuals involved with this from a percentage basis and the experiences that you have had. Let's just say in the first 10, 15 years, delving into this realm of society, how much of it is realistic to what the general public believe and how much of it is a bunch of crap made up?
Well, I mean, at this point, here in 2022,
Big difference.
most people, yeah, there's a fairly big difference for the majority of people. So, especially in the paranormal, if somebody encounters a witch or a Wiccan, they're going to have at least some conversance with the fact that this is not people meeting in the woods to kiss the devil on his bunghole and sacrificing babies. Like, these are people who are practicing an earth based religion, who practice magic, but it doesn't really look much different from Christians lighting candles and praying. The it's a very similar stuff. There's incense, there's candles, there's chants or prayers, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's a valid religion. It's not people trying to do nefarious, horrible things. In the middle 90s, when I first started this, when the very possibility of being like a goth kid dressed in black could get you picked up off the street by the local police just because they assume that you must be satanic. A really good example of that is a friend of mine, Damian Eccles, who was a practitioner and listened to heavy metal music and definitely like dressed the part in West Memphis, Arkansas. And
That's a risk.
there was a pretty high profile triple murder of 3 boys. And Damien was already being followed by the local police as like that troublesome kid because they were just convinced because he wore black, he must be practicing Satanism as they perceived it. And he ended up spending nearly 20 years of his life on death row, erroneously, because of it. He's out.
Wow.
But, the West Memphis Three, like, and that was the environment in which I started doing television work because somebody needed to, and I had the background academically to not just be another kid dressed in black, not just another, like, freak goth singer, but someone who is like, and also I can bring receipts for why we're not doing what you think. The only thing that has me worried now is, while the majority of people are not going to automatically jump to conclusions with voodoo or Santeria, or just see everybody who listens to metal music as automatically some sort of, meeting with Satan in the woods type. We are moving back in some aspects of our culture to a
Yes.
point that is alarmingly like the Satanic Panic, on a level that has me very vigilant. It's very reminiscent of what I recall from those times.
We are in an age of easy information. Unfortunately, a lot of it is erroneous. A lot of it
Mm,
is supportive to an ideology that, if you search hard enough, you will find to say, see, I was right.
mhm,
Whereas in the 90s, 80s, 70s, you were told information, whether it be through your friends or through your social networks, and you could look up the facts, read the facts, understand that, what I was saying I was misinformed on. Now that's almost kind of being swept under the rug, and it's custom made now for each individual. And again, talking about from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the way people viewed paganism, and again, paganism was only bastardized through the Christian faith because it's older. And so for a lot of the people that don't understand that, originally from a symbolism part of it, it was something that still was about community, still was about faith, and then they again weaponized it. I mean, this is where today you would have expected those who were in their 60s, 70s, even 50s would still look at Wiccan paganism as something that was demonic. You'd think that would be kind of slowly, with existentialism going away, but instead it's enveloping back in with a whole new generation because they can go out there and find like-minded people and get reinforcement. And from that leading into things that Ken's going to want to talk about here in a few
mm.
minutes, that could breed so much more terrifying results than from what it was years ago. And years ago, it was, still some violent occurrences. But in today's society, Michelle, it's got to be worrisome.
It really is. Well, and the internet is like the best and worst thing to have happened to us. Like, I love
Agreed.
the ease of communicating with people. I love having like 15 Library of Alexandrias at our fingertips. And yet it's also very easily weaponized because the algorithm and the way that searches can be kind of self-affirming, how easy it is to fall into an echo chamber, especially when you don't know the questions to ask. I think that's the biggest problem for anybody who wants to like delve into any of this. The paranormal, paganism, witchcraft, any aspect of the occult, the amount of what you don't know means you don't even know what questions to ask. And you are certainly not in a position to be able to tell what's accurate information when you start your research. So if you're just starting out, if it looks authoritative, you have very little reason to suspect it. And there are plenty of people and individuals and sites that will weaponize that will take advantage of that naivete.
You bring up a very interesting point, too, about the acceptance today. Would Ghost Adventures and Paranormal State and the ilk, would they have been as readily accepted had it not been for two regular Joes who introduced it, who worked for Roto-Rooter,
Mm.
and they had families, and it was just like, hey, I'm just your next door neighbor. I just happen to go out and look for ghosts, versus the darker goth wearing black, which is, almost the epicenter of the whole paranormal field, is making sure that you've got that type of attire because it fits in with the field.
Mm.
But would it have been
But
accepted just as easily?
I really think that it helped normalize it,
That's the word I'm
especially
looking for.
at a time where. So when I moved into my neighborhood here, suburbia at the end of a cul-de-sac, and I was just getting some of my books published, so it was like 2004, 2005. I was still very much like, there is the weird neighbor here. But there is something about being on television and being shown to also be, no, really, this is just your neighbor. This is this person who writes books, and maybe they look a little weird the way they dress, but also, so being able to connect to a person as a human being really makes what they do something that people are more likely to
Yes.
like pause and go, oh, it's not this scary thing I am projecting on them.
They have a way of viewers have a way of idolizing and then beginning to mirror what it is that they see. Star Wars is a perfect
Mm.
example of a cult. I mean, you go to any Comic Con and people are dressed up still as Princess Leia and Boba Fett. So no different than what you'll see when they emulate their particular celebrities that they've seen on Discovery Channel or on Sci-Fi and Travel Channel, that they want to wear the dark clothes. They want to scream for the demons and threaten, and I want to be attacked and all those different things.
Oh God.
And the message is kind of being lost at the same time. But it is something Ken and I have spoke at nauseum on this show with other guests about. There is a dividing line between what is the paranormal field and what is paranormal entertainment.
Hmm.
But that blur seems to get broader and broader. And again, this is what causes so much animosity in the world today. People who just hate because they feel a specific emotion and then it is validated by some social media outlet. And then it just continues to be pounded and pounded and pounded into that person. It's a shame.
Yeah, what one of the questions I would have with Paranormal State, because it was sort of, it leaned into the Warrens, and there was a lot of demonology and a lot of demonic possession. It does feed into some of those expectations. Actually, that was one of the main reasons that Elfie Music and Josh Light pushed to bring me onto the show, was they wanted someone who had a different point of view, who had
Right.
the background to sometimes, and who wasn't afraid to push back, to like literally have an argument with Lorraine Warren about Ouija boards while the cameras were rolling, and
It's
like
not,
say,
so awesome.
you know, it's not always this that is the gate to hell. And in fact, like 5 minutes ago, before you found this Ouija board, you thought everything was just hunky dory in this house. Like you were like, oh, these are fine ghosts. So, so sometimes it's in the eye of the person using it. Like symbols are not as cut and dried as all that.
And it also depends upon the director and the narrative that they're
Mm,
directing towards on that particular episode, because again, fear sells, just like sex sells, fear sells, and they'll
yes.
push it to the nth degree. um, any great stories from that time filming with these shows that you could share where it is, there's some brevity that goes on behind the scenes. And listen, as
Mm,
paranormal investigators, if you don't have a sense of humor, you're going to lose your mind. You've got to
mm.
be able to have some sort of lightheartedness to kind of break the tension and such. Were there any circumstances where those directors, producers, those serious, we got to be serious now, we can't joke about this, any of those stories to share?
Well, I mean, the first is, so I have a fairly atypical response when really weird stuff happens. Like, it is very rare to be at a haunting investigation and have physical phenomena happen. And I am sort of like a kid in a candy store. So most people jump or scream or yell or like, dude, run. And I laugh, like I cackle, because it is just so extraordinary that this thing just happened.
Is
But
it a
I'm supposed,
Capricorn thing? What the heck? I
maybe it's a
sing.
Capricorn thing. I don't know. But man, I never got scolded more than when, in one case, and they just cut me completely out because they're just like, nobody's going to believe you that this actually happened, because
And it
it was up on the near the Cape in Massachusetts. It was the Puckwudgie episode. I learned about Puckwudgies for this episode, but the kids in the house had been talking about getting pulled under, that there were phantom things trying to drown them in the family pool. Now I grew up swimming, so I was like, I volunteer as tribute. Please put me in the pool. Like I'll be in this pool for this. I just want to see what happens. So I'm swimming back and forth, and I'm swimming back and forth, and there's a point where the pool just gets weird and uncanny, and I feel like just this bizarre disorientation that is like
what?
nothing I'd experienced. The pool gets like weird and misty, and I'm almost like it's strangely, I'm like, I know which way is up, but why does it suddenly feel like I'm just somewhere else? And as this uncanniness just sort of like bubbles up around me,
Holy crap.
something not as clear as a hand, but definitely gripping, grabs my calf and my ankle and pulls me back and down under the water.
Shut up.
And I mean like forcibly.
Wow.
So I go under, and it like lets me right back up. So I, burst the surface, and all I can do is laugh because this is the most what the moment
Yeah.
of like, did this what just happened? So I'm laughing. I'm laughing loud enough in this suburban neighborhood that I think I woke up every dog for miles. Like just loud cackle. Like everybody comes running. Two of the cameras that they had on me like just stopped working at that weird misty thing. So they're just like, we don't even know
Wow.
what just happened. And I'm like, me neither, but you can tell the family, the kids aren't imagining it. Something's trying to dunk them in the pool.
Holy smokes. And that went to the cutting room floor? They didn't keep
Yeah.
that?
No, they didn't keep it
Oh.
because I didn't come up screaming. I came up laughing.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a shame of the matter because that was a natural reaction. They should have accepted that.
But that's one of the challenges with paranormal television is trying to get a point across in a very small period of time to as many people as possible when you can't always like put footnotes.
No.
You can't be like, oh, by the way, Belanger just kind of cackles when they are overwhelmed with emotion. Sorry. Probably a defense mechanism. I mean, I grew up in a hospital. I had a lot of crap going on. And so it got cut because they were just like, we don't know what happened. We don't know what, people aren't going to believe that this was real.
It's funny because it's still, even this far down the road, even into the 2000s, how things still have to become stereotyped. And again, maybe it's the old school version in Hollywood, passed down generation to generation, the money makers, the ones who really produce this, that say, there's probably date night, there's probably a guy and a girl on the couch, and they're underneath the covers, and we got to give them something scary. She laughed, cutting room floor. And it's like, be just as much people. There are other people who react that same way. People who fall down, they get hurt, and they laugh. It's just an actual reaction. But they just dismiss it. Yeah, Johnny Zaffis and so many others we talked to had the same kind of experiences, and say, look, it's part of being a human being. We're not all lurking around. And isn't it funny? You've been in enough Paracons to see some paranormal teams who take that persona
Oh yeah,
serious.
like.
Never smile, never joke around. We're here, arms folded. It's a shame because it kind of spoils the whole fun of it. And we try to have fun with regards to that.
No, what I grew up with was like, be wary of people who take themselves too seriously, and don't be the person who takes themselves too seriously. Like, and also, activity is more likely to happen if you're having fun.
Yes.
I got a chance to talk to Al Peacock of the Philip experiment, the Canadian group that basically invented a ghost that more or less made a construct in the 70s to
Yes.
communicate like the whole like table tipping and everything. And one of the things that he said that like stuck with me was when they were trying to be super serious and very like, we are professionals here trying to communicate with stuff. Like it just like there was a heaviness to the room, and they didn't get much response. They only started getting reactions when, and everybody who has gone on investigations knows this moment. You went in serious, you were trying too hard, you finally just sort of wore yourselves out, and you're like, F it, and you start joking around. And as you start joking around and like maybe being silly, like blowing off some steam, that's when the door slams, and that's when the salt shaker goes across the thing, and suddenly like, all hell breaks loose. And that was what had happened with them. And they found that the energy, like if they were relaxed enough to put that kind of energy out, that he really believed that it was helping to fuel the phenomenon, that it was helping to encourage a reaction, that being so serious was almost shutting it down.
You think about the pictures you would see from the turn of the century, and once again, you had these, such as what Harry Houdini had to deal with, but these psychic fakes,
Hmm.
these, these ones that are supposed to bring his mother back to speak, and everything is very, very dark. The black and white films, everybody's very solemn, and it's almost again, it's building foundation, building foundation, building foundation. But we're now finding cracks in that foundation. We're now understanding that certain procedures, certain attitudes, certain mentality, this is a better way for us to do what we do and enjoy it more than being so dismal for those 8, 9 hours on a cold slab of concrete and an AVP recorder. You can actually enjoy yourself and maybe get a better engagement with those spirits at that time. Um, so again, I applaud the going against the grain, so to speak, and doing what you did during the show. And I'm going to ask the ultimate question before we bring Ken back on, because somebody somewhere, even though I've not been looking at chat and talking to you about it, but well, let's go with our friend and another, again, the cornerstone, Ryan Buell. I know there's been ups and downs. Do you still keep in contact with him, and how is he today?
Most of us don't. For so
Really,
many reasons, most of us don't.
that's a shame. That's a shame. I mean,
Sometimes friendships and bridges are burned to a point where there's really no going back.
again, what an opportunity that the people that he wound up knowing and meeting in this field, and and again, we go back to Mark and Debbie Constantino, where
Mm,
people will take that and right away put a paranormal spin on it, and not understanding that there are mental issues that people go
yeah.
through, there are emotional issues. Go ahead.
Hand God, the biggest demons are just were just his demons. I mean, I wouldn't trade the experience. We were such close friends. We went through so much stuff. We would, like we stood in solidarity against production that would sometimes pressure us to interpret things a certain way, or they would never directly say we would like you to fake evidence, but they definitely, toward the end of things, like really would imply like, but should we would really like you to get evidence in the next hour, and we're like, what, we're supposed to pull it out of our own? What? It doesn't work that way. um and I mean, I'm still very close. I mean, obviously with Katrina, with Elfie, with Taddy.
Yeah.
Josh holds a special place in my heart. Sergi's gotten off and kind of done his own thing, but like there were some things toward the end, and there's a point where you just have to draw boundaries with people who maybe don't have great boundaries themselves.
As an energy vampire, you can absorb the worst kind of energy, can't you?
I would like to not.
I hear that for sure. Ken, you want to come back and join us? We'll check to see whether or not there's still feedback there.
How are we doing?
I don't hear anything now. It sounds fantastic. Our very special guest, Michelle, and I'm always sitting there going, because we go back and forth about
Mm,
Jeff Belanger, Michelle Belanger.
mm.
How do you like the pronunciation? Belanger?
Belanger, preferably. So I grew up with the same pronunciation as Jeff. And then I
Okay.
met my grandfather, from whom I inherited the name. And he gave me this look, and he's like, "What did your grandmother do?" I She Midwesternized it. I don't know. So mostly out of honor for him, who I really take after. Like, holy moly. Uh, he was this big, rangy, 6'8" World War II vet,
Whoa.
who was the light heavyweight champion of the European theater, who's a boxer and a bunch of just a big personality. Like, you think I'm larger
Wow.
than life, you should have met him. Uh, so Belanger, partly because owning that part of my heritage.
Would that be visible on Google at all?
Ah,
Your
Kid Baker. So yeah, he boxed under Kid Baker.
no relationship to Oxbaker, right?
Nope, not that I know of. Yeah, I thought he was full of a lot of stories that I didn't expect to be real stories. And like, the more I dig, the more I'm like, oh, but what were you doing in France before D-Day? And okay, okay, I'm not gonna
Real,
ask.
real
Explain
deal.
some of those medals.
Unbelievable. All right, Mr. Ken DaCosta, I turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, I thank you very much.
I'll be
And
back. I'll be back.
for those
Yeah.
of you who just tuned in, you are watching Dead Air on Dead Air Full Spectrum and KGRA. Our guest tonight, Michelle Belanger. Michelle, I wanted to ask you about your journey a little bit here. Your ability to walk the line between being a confirmed believer and an experiencer, but you have an ability that some don't, to be able to step back and look at things from 10,000 feet.
Mm.
You know, when something goes on, because here's the thing, in the paranormal, we do love our theories and we do love to catalog things. Maybe it makes us a little less afraid. Maybe it makes us feel a little bit smarter. But there are benefits of extensive research and having a willingness to challenge conventional wisdom, especially in a paranormal field. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your ability to step away from things, even when things go sideways, because it's a trait that not everybody has. And full disclosure, this is one of the things I really respect about you, to be able to say, wait a minute now.
Part of that is my upbringing. And so my grandmother, everybody asks, like, what type of psychic are you? And it's mostly I pick up like residual energy and emotions and like sort of imprints on places. It's probably the loudest stuff for me. But every once in a while, I will have like dreams that come true. And this is relevant. That was one of my grandmother's big things. And I had a dream the night before the space shuttle Challenger blew up that I didn't talk about. And when I came home from school, because I was in 7th grade, I was in a state. Like, you know, everything that you go through when you have a dream that comes true, especially a big one of like.
So you're what, like 13 or something like that at the time? 12,
7th grade,
13?
yeah, whatever you are.
Whatever that
12?
is, yeah.
Yeah, 12, 13, yeah. 7th grade. we had an earthquake the week before, then the space shuttle Challenger blew up. Like it was a bumper year. So I'm having this existential crisis of like, me at this age, like, could I have stopped it? Who could I have called? Like, what should I have done? And my grandmother first says, anyone can be psychic after the fact. And that might sound like a harsh thing to say, but like it's a sobering, important thing.
Yeah,
She's
I mean, you can relate things back and put them in wherever it makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, and she's like, no one will be able to tell the difference between you making it up right now or you having had it and just not shared it with anybody. She's like, so in the future, if you have dreams that you think might be telling you something, write them down. Write them down in ink and set them aside and let somebody else be the judge of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this gave me such a firm foundation of the necessary objectivity, because we're not objective, no matter how much we want to try to be. When it comes to our own experience, psychic perceptions especially are subjective. They are being interpreted through all of this stuff. Like there's so many psychological layers we are experiencing inside ourselves.
Yeah, of course, there's a level of confirmation bias and
Yeah.
all of those things being human.
Yeah, and like you're going to have one of two primary ways of comfort of that sort of bias. You have this experience, and either you really don't want to believe it's true, so you find all the reasons to tell yourself it's not, or you desperately want it to believe it's true, and you find too many reasons to prove to yourself, even past what's reasonable. So I was raised with this sort of weirdly skeptical approach, while at the same time we acknowledge that these abilities were real. So the suggestion was to always have a spotter, to always have records, to always be immersed in the moment and allow the experience to be whatever it is. And after you've recorded it and experienced it fully, step back and then kind of put your analyzer hat on, become your own investigator. But don't rely on only yourself. For the really important things, find someone who can do the research for you, who's not going to be biased, who's not going to be just looking for proof or a way to debunk it. Someone who is as unconnected to it as possible. Yeah. And it's one of the things that I've really valued with the paranormal groups that I've worked with, because they are people that I know I can rely on to just let me go and do my thing. And then when I'm done, they're the ones who confirm or deny any of those pieces. I don't have to worry about it. I just let it be whatever it is.
Yeah. I don't think, from my own experience, maybe it's a small sample. I've been around doing this for a while, but there aren't a lot of scholars in this field. Now, don't go sending me your emails, okay? And you're someone I would consider an academic. And I mean, just because of your educational background, if nothing else, and your current study and research on it. And the way ghost hunting is now, it's become very much sort of a social activity. You get together with your buddies and go, which is fine. I don't take any issue with that. But when people don't take that extra step, do you think they're missing a broader picture? And I'm not necessarily talking about background on a location, the history, names, dates. We're talking about what is it you're looking for exactly, and where is it you're looking for it? So I guess my question would be, do you kind of wish that people took that extra step sometimes? Because, I mean, it's great to go in and you've got things going ping and lighting up and everything like that, but there's a bigger picture here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I firmly believe that there are many different paths to knowledge and understanding, and they don't all have to be book learning. And that's one of the reasons I'm no longer in academia, because there was a kind of hoity-toity ivory tower sense that like it always had to be like 15 syllable words in order for it to be legitimate. And at the same time, we are not the first ones doing this. This is not a recent phenomenon. Like, there was stuff going on in the early 1900s. There was stuff going on during the 1800s. They might have called it a little differently, but we have enough books like Granville's Triumphs. It's got the drummer of Tedsworth in it. The works of Dom Augustin Calmet, who, it's a weird mishmash of religious experiences and folklore, but he was doing his best for his time period in the 1500s and 1600s to catalog people's experiences. We're not the first people trying to understand what we currently call the paranormal. So having some context is really important. And I think widening our lens is probably the most important thing. Whether you do that by academic research to see what other people have theorized before and what studies have been done before, or from a cultural standpoint, what other people have had experiences and what are their theories, especially like if you're having phenomena in a specific location, were there people who lived there before who had a take on that? Widening our perception among different religious belief systems, because those can narrow our scope. And at least being open to a different point of view. Because I really believe that this is what we're actually looking at. This phenomena is a many-faceted jewel. Like, we're maybe getting one or two pieces whenever each of us has an experience. And it only by communicating all of these different interpretations and experiences and takes, hearing everybody's perception on it, will we get some inkling of what we're actually looking at. And it's also why I really like taking both the tech into the field, but also psychics into the field, also folks who have like the historical archiving background, like multiple approaches, because we still don't know which one is perfect. And personally, I think you need all of them.
Yeah. I know you quote Carl Jung on your website. Do you follow sort of a Jungian kind of approach to this, as opposed to a Freudian type of approach? Because, and where I want to go with this question, and this is, I've always thought there are two elements to a sighting. One is projection and one is perception, where a spirit will project, because we all hear stories about someone appearing who died in their 80s but appears as a young man or a young woman. Very weird stories, but I've had them, I'm sure you've heard too.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's that projection thing. And then the other part of it is our receptors, the way we receive it and perceive what it is that's being given to us. So if we were to find out whenever that time comes, and I'm sure those who come after us who might look at it the way we do, you talked about the 1900s, and we say, well, what do they know? They didn't know anything. We're so smart now.
Yeah.
But if it all comes down to the idea that this is part of the human condition, essentially it's all in our heads. Not that we're hoaxing or making stuff up or imagining it, but this is how we're receiving these messages, or whatever you want to call them. We'll call them sightings. Does that make this whole thing any less fascinating?
Absolutely not. And yes, Carl Jung and Jungian psychology had a huge influence on me. Stanislav Grof, a whole bunch of folks. From Jung, that idea of like the symbol sets that we have, like man and his symbols, like just this sort of like internal language that through which we process the world. The idea of the collective unconscious and the fact that sort of great forms and shapes live in it that both influence us in our imagination, and which when we imagine them we sort of feed back into them. Every story we tell, every myth, every movie starts to build up these great forms, and they create a kind of language. So if you were to be confronted by a being that we have no real context for, your brain is going to kind of like go through its little like flip deck and go, not sure, not sure, not sure. Kind of looks like the Virgin Mary. Yep, there's gold, there's blue.
Right.
Think it's sort of mother-like. So you're going to see the Virgin Mary because you have no other context for anything else. And you may happen to be in a place where it's the Virgin of Guadalupe. And if you dig into the mythology of the folks who came long before Christianity, they're describing the same figure and they have a different name for her.
Right.
And she's part of their thing too. So they're seeing the same phenomenon and their symbols are different. So there's this lens that we are all a lens. And we each refract the experience differently, and then add to the fact that you have to find some way to interpret your experience and then articulate what you just had happen to you. And like these steps of like trying to convey what happened, there's so much that gets shifted. I have no doubt. There are very few things that I will say that I believe in 100%, but I have no doubt that there is something we're experiencing. There is some phenomena, some point. What that is, I don't think any of us can ever say with 100% certainty, especially because there's that first step of trying to interpret, like your brain just literally flailing for some way to tell you what you're perceiving.
Right.
And then you trying to find some way to put that thing that is ineffable into words.
Right. I think, well, this relates back to what I said, because all of these things are on a very personal level. And your own level of experience, of knowledge, the knowledge base that you build up. How deep do you want to? Because if we're trying to, like, that's the thing, we're all trying to find answers, right? We want to know if there's something more. But you can only relate your experience to your own personal base of knowledge.
Mm.
This is why when, we have lightning and thunder, the gods aren't bowling anymore. We've moved beyond that. So I think it behooves each individual. If you really want to get to the bottom of things, you have to go beyond the gadgets and the gizmos that are being made. And listen, it stands to reason in this day and age that technology would find its way into the paranormal too. Got it. But there's some deeper meaning to this. And we're all going to have a different experience because some people will question it and some people won't.
At the very least, I think it is incredibly helpful for people to read in mythology and folklore, and not just their birth culture, but like as many as they can possibly get their hands on, because you will start to see lines of connection and parallels. Joseph Campbell is another person who had a huge influence on me. Actually, if
Yes.
I have a trifecta, it's Jung, Campbell, and a fellow named Victor Turner, who talks about rites of passage and basically how humans create ritual out of pretty much all of our experiences, ways of acknowledging transitions in our lives and changes in our lives. Like we ritualize everything from like the first ball over the home plate for the opening baseball game on down to that rite of passage, getting shit faced for your 21st birthday.
Right.
We are ritual creatures, whether you make it religion or not. Campbell was the person who lit the fire for me for the stories we tell and how those stories, even if they're fiction, still contain truths about ourselves and our world, and how the stories that somebody from, the shogunates of Japan and the stories that somebody in 19th century America will look on the surface completely different.
Hmm.
But if you peel them back, our experiences are human and therefore common. So there are commonalities in what we tell.
Right.
Seeing those commonalities are really important to some of our paranormal investigations, because how many times do people report a woman in white? How many times do people go to a hotel at this point and they see either little kids running up and down the hallway or somebody like on a tricycle? And if you aren't familiar with Kubrick's The Shining and the huge impact, like visually, that had on people, you wouldn't recognize some of those interpreted phenomena as things that are just being plugged into symbols that people have imbibed through pop culture.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean
We're
that they're not real, though. That's the really big important thing I want to say, is just because our context, the shape that we give it, we have taken from a story or from a myth or even from a movie, doesn't mean that there isn't something there. That's just a language that we are finding a way to translate it into so that we can relate to it.
right. And I think that this is the idea of a lot of religious texts. They're parables, they're cautionary tales. They are to be not necessarily, indoctrinated into your own life, but you take these things in terms of a roadmap that you can choose to ignore or fall in line, whatever it is you want to do. Dead Air Full Spectrum here. Our guest is Michelle Belanger. We are coming up to break right now, so why don't we sneak a question in here for you, Michelle? This is from Eugene Reedy. Do occult researchers fall into their own echo chamber? I guess it's
I
kind of
think,
a subjective question, I guess.
honestly, I think any researcher, anybody can fall into their own echo chamber. And the real danger is at the point where you are so self assured that you don't question where your information is coming from or your interpretation of that information, then you're on dangerous water. Like you're on a slippery slope to just basically reaffirming your own biases over and over and over again. So it's important to be just on the edge of your comfort zones, to explore things that you don't always agree with. And that's not to say that you must agree with them when you're done, but it's important to read them, to research them, and ask yourself, all right, if I believe that this is beyond the pale, why? Like
Hmm.
actually engage and have conversations about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring George back in here to take us to break. We're going to get to more of your questions a little bit later. And I will be back a little later on. We're going to get into some more things. Hopefully, I can cover everything I want to with you tonight because it's a great opportunity to do it. George.
Yeah, the versatility of this incredible individual, the things that
Why,
so
thank you.
she's
Oh, you're talking
she's
about Michelle. Oh, okay.
it's a general statement. That's all there is to it. But and we'll get into the books that she has written, and again, you continue uh, to uh, to work diligently on these projects. And did I mention that I wrote a book with Andrea
Oh,
Perrin?
Good
Woo!
time to go to break.
Yeah, it's I've
Congratulations.
never mentioned this before yet. Well, it's been out for a little bit.
Oh,
but-
Jeff Hilton just showed up in chat, by the way. I was going to say, I haven't seen Jeff yet. Maybe we should do a wellness check on him, but there he is.
It's
It
that.
took you so long. Dude, we start at 8 o'clock around here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny the things that you and Ken were talking about, and one of the things that I love to say regularly, Michelle, and I used to have arguments about this when we're dealing with the spirit box and some of the introductions of new techniques and new equipment, was the term science as we know it.
Mm.
And we're experiencing that right now with the jump from the Hubble telescope to the Joseph Webb telescope. And scientists are reanalyzing the things that they thought were happening and now realizing that that's not the fact. So it's happening so rapidly now.
Mhm.
And I have a feeling the same process is going to take root in the paranormal field also, with equipment, with procedures, with locations, where we're going to discover a lot of the things that we've been doing, such as that dire demeanor and very low. It's going to go away, and I think people are going to try to engage more in an enjoyable part of what it is that we do. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future brings in our field. But we are going to go to break at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen. If you're joining us late, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget that thumbs up and the reminder bell for upcoming content. On the other side of the break, Ken's going to let you know about some of the things that we've brought onto the page. If you've not checked it out yet, you are going to be mind blown. We'll be back on the other side. You're watching Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. Stay with us.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Scrolling all day, time can disappear. Wanna make it count? Why not volunteer?
Posting pics of your food, that takes up time. Time, you've got time to binge all of season 9, though it got so bad.
Time, you got time. We're gonna grow back and be the same browse you had.
Just a few hours to keep families from harm. Help us end home fires with Sound the Alarm.
Volunteer for a day to install free smoke alarms in your community.
Discover the observation deck on dk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the second hour of our program this evening. Our very special guest, Michelle Belanger, going to be joining us here in just a second for hour number 2. We'll be taking your calls, answering your questions from chat. But I wanted Ken to take a moment here to talk about the channel, our YouTube channel, and some of the new and interesting things. And this is the important part of hitting that reminder bell, because sometimes Ken puts things up there that blow my mind. And why don't you tell everybody, Ken, what's been up there and what's coming also?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this before, and I'll go through this really quickly. We talked about doing 360-degree technology, and it's something myself and Julie DeMay from our group Rise Up had talked about for the last 2 years, to do a lot more video documentation, but to give it a more immersive, interactive experience. So what we've done is we started out by putting some 360-degree videos of what you know as the Conjuring House. For those of you who may not ever make the trip there, you're able to come in with us and pan around the room and look at it from a 360-degree perspective. So we've got quite a few videos of that put up under the Rise Up Investigation playlist on the Dead Airflow Spectrum page. This past weekend, we took that to another level by doing an Oculus test. And you know, with the headset you put on and everything is in virtual reality, where we're hoping with this successful test, we will be able to take you with us on these investigations or these walkthroughs. So, you know, those of you who have that technology will be able to join us and literally look around the room. It's one of those things where if there's a noise and we're all looking over here, you have a chance to go back, pan the camera, and see what it was in that corner that we heard, whether it was something or nothing. So this is the technology that's available to us. So we jumped in with both feet, and I think that it's something everyone will enjoy. And it's almost like a peer review in a way, because you can experience the same things that we do and be able to essentially be in the room with us. So there's more of that on the way, but we're taking the training wheels off a little bit now, George. And, you know, we made our mistakes, and but we're learning the technology. So there's a lot more of that to come.
No, I think it's truly amazing, both the technology and the concept. And, you know, I think it'll probably be the closest that I ever get to the Conjuring House. Did I mention I wrote a book with Andrea Perrin, and I have never been to the Conjuring House. How many times is this for you? Like 22 now, I think.
What's it been, like 7 minutes since we heard that? Actually, we have been invited to participate in events and so forth at the house going forward by the new owner, Jacqueline Nunez, who is a lovely woman.
I hate you.
And, the house is in good stewardship right now. So we're looking forward to that, however we can contribute. But we're going to be going to different, you know, quote, haunted locations and places of mystery. And eventually we're going to be doing 360-degree drone footage, too, of a lot of outdoor places and things like that. So, you know, evolve or die, right? So we jumped into it with both feet. Just wanted to mention tonight, we may be opening up the phone lines in the second hour if you'd like to talk to Michelle and have a question for her. And we also we're going to try to get to as many of your questions as possible. They're in queue. And as time goes on, we will do our best to accommodate you. And because there's some other things we definitely want to get into with our guests tonight.
Yeah, and try to, you know, when you guys are waiting on the phones to speak with Michelle, just try and keep it organized. Let's not start pushing and shoving. We'll get to you without question. But let's bring our wonderful guest back on with us, Michelle Belanger. And thank you for taking this Sunday to come with us and talk about the field. Again, you're very much involved with a lot of writing right now, as we were talking before the show. And I want to go ahead and put your books up from Amazon, but again, launching this from an experiencer to sharing your experiences in print, was it something that you had always planned on doing from a younger age?
I always wanted to be a writer. Like I started as soon as I could put pen to paper and scribe things. Like the first thing I did was write like a little book that I illustrated and bound myself at like 4.5. So this was just part of my path. The part that was unforeseen for me was I was like, I'm going to be a novelist. I'm going to write, you know, stories and whatnot. And where it was pretty clear to me that my talents needed to be was nonfiction at first. First about psychic vampirism, because there was no one who was covering that topic as someone who experienced it, as someone who had this as a capacity, as just something that they were born with, as anything other than just the psychic self-defense books, and a lot of chronicling different marginalized communities. I've written on, obviously that the paranormal. My degree is in comparative religious studies. I learned from Jesuits. I took demonology from Jesuits. And so I won't call myself a demonologist because it's a very specific and tends to be a theological role, but a demonographer, I will say, that is someone who, from a scholarly standpoint, studies the idea and belief of demons, which is where the Dictionary of Demons come from. The Portuguese edition is the one that's sitting behind me because I absolutely love what they did with the cover.
All right, Portugal represent. Never mind. I'm back now. I heard we don't hear Portugal very much, so
I honestly, it's such a beast of a book. I mean, it is enormous. First, they did an audio book of it, and I reached out to the voiceover person. I was like, I feel so sorry for you. Some of these are solid consonants. These names are literally somebody's, basically a typographical error in a scribe's manuscript from the 17th century. Nobody expected to be able to pronounce this, and you have to somehow noodle out a way to do it. I am so sorry.
Kind of looks like an eye chart when you look at it. Right?
Some of them are just. The whole purpose with it was to just chronicle things that had been named as demons, evil spirits, fallen angels, etc., in a very specific subset of literature, grimoires, magical books from the European tradition. And some of them we know. I don't want to scare anybody by saying them out loud, even though I will bust that myth. That is not a thing. But some of them are just literally there's Znextier, or my favorite. Leonard.
Not that.
Leonard the goat.
Hey, let me ask you a question. When you sit down to write, what's your environment? What's your muse? I mean, do you have music going? You have cats running around the keyboard? You have, what kind of chaos do you put yourself through when you sit down to write?
I don't write at a desk. I've got enough neuropathy and stuff from the early heart surgeries in my legs that I need to be kind of reclining, make myself very comfortable and basically a pillow fort. I need music, but I'm also a vocalist. It can't have words that I recognize. Otherwise, I will just be singing along with it and I will no longer be writing. So it's usually a lot of soundtracks, a lot of big swelling, Hans Zimmer, Graham Revell, a bunch of other ones, some Lisa Gerrard.
Lisa Gerrard's amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love her stuff. I wrote a song that was an homage to this sort of glossolalia, the language she would make up and sing in. That was fun.
Oh my!
I need to be pretty solitary. I need a lot of quiet time to just cogitate and live in my head when I'm doing stuff. And especially with
your album.
Yep. In fact, Elishina is the one that is in a language that I made up for the song. When I'm doing research, there's just piles. Bless my wife, who will put up with the fact that there is suddenly Post-it notes everywhere and notebooks everywhere and 15 different stacks of teetering books, wherever my path happens to be. I think it was the worst for the Dictionary of Demons because there were so many books that I sourced. And yeah, it's a slightly different thing if I'm writing fiction because the story is immersive in a different way, but still need the music, still need my little nook. I've got a space that we made for me in the basement that's really unique to me. It's my apothecary nook, so it's got all my herbalism and incense making supplies in one part. There's literally dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, all these shelves and whatnot. And then a kind of raised, almost loft bed, and it's a Pullman cart because it's got these curtains that I can draw and just have my own little pillow fort.
Like Words on Wheels or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm quirky. I'm totally okay with it. I mean, trying to think. I'm trying to remember the writer who would write predominantly in the bathtub while eating apples. Doesn't matter. We're all quirky. It's just an artsy person thing.
Yeah. So how about when you're writing nonfiction as opposed to fiction, right? Because you have the Dictionary of Demons, then you have the Shadow Side series. So is this, how much of it is autobiographical? How much of it is observation of things around you? Is it a combination of both things? Because, you know, to write fiction and nonfiction, you're carrying two different jugs of water there.
A lot of my fiction ends up being born of the what ifs that I think about when writing and doing the research for the nonfiction, but stuff that isn't necessarily tenable or provable. So the Shadow Side series draws on Book of Enoch and Watcher Angels and a lot of ideas that were pretty spurious. Like I couldn't be like, this is 100% factually accurate, but it was still a neat idea. And I sort of wanted to play with, like, what does that look like? Like, how would that look like in the world? You know, what if there were these, like, you know, half angel, half human beings that were literally unkillable and they just hung around and they were out here in the world? Like, what is that like? So I got to play with that. I sometimes let fiction be my playground where I explore what ifs and like impossible theories.
Yeah. Yeah, that sort of fish out of water type deal where something is plopped into a different time. Yeah.
I will say for the fiction, sometimes I end up doing more research because with the Shadow Side series, it's urban fantasy, so it's set here and now. And you don't realize how much you absolutely suddenly need to be an expert on every car you mention, every weapon your character.
Yeah.
It's like I ended up sitting down with somebody with the Coast Guard and talking about like boats and boating and seasons on Lake Erie and like what happens if somebody's crossing international water. Like just so many tiny little details.
Yep. Better get it right.
Because you will be torn apart if you're wrong. Somebody out there will get into your comment section and tear it up.
No, seriously, like back in the day when Bram Stoker was writing Dracula, he like read like one book on the Carpathians and made everything else up as he went. And it's really obvious to us now because we don't have Google and the internet. But these days, especially if everybody's an expert on something. So if I got like the ballistics wrong on something, you can guarantee like 15 people who know guns way better than I do would just be like, they're just being like, you have broken my immersion. This is not fair.
It's amazing where it comes from. I mean, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein as a competition with like 4 other writers. Hey, how did that work out? You know, so you never know where that inspiration, where that muse is going to come from.
So much came out of that Haunted Summer. That was undergrad stuff. I could go on for hours about Mary and Shelley, Byron and Polidori and the very weird stuff that they got up to and all of the literature that came out of it.
They were like bohemian to the nth degree.
Our very special guest, Michelle Belanger. If you see, guys, we do have the number listed along the bottom there, 855-472-5483. That's 85KGRA Live. If you wish to call in, you have a question or comment for our guest. Ken, do you want to knock out some of those questions from chat? Because I know they're accumulating.
Yeah, let's do a couple of those, if you don't mind, and we'll move on to the next topic here. Cindy Sines said, Michelle, how are you able to do it blindfolded? Are your visions more vivid? Yeah, that's a good question. Is it sensory deprivation? How does that work?
It is partly sensory deprivation, but initially it was to simply rule out the unintentional cold reading of any location. I've got a pretty big brain. Like I aggregate information and data pretty quickly. And I always held back and questioned when I walked into a location, how much was I simply assuming about the place based on the art that I saw on the walls or the photos or the architecture. Just walking into a house, you get a good idea of like when it was built. And I didn't want to be projecting expectations onto it. So by taking that layer of perception away, it puts me in a place where I'm only falling back on whatever my mind's eye is giving me. I have found it incredibly freeing. And also at this point, it has become a kind of ritual to put the thing on, to focus my perceptions and basically give myself this incredibly physical cue that now is the time to open wide all of your other senses and perceive on this other level. And it's vivid to a point that is sometimes astounding to me. Like I don't always get told, I don't get told in the moment if I'm accurate or not. And they don't always remember to tell me until they ship me off home. Sometimes I don't know that I was accurate until I watch the episode with everybody, which is always kind of a trip. But it's so helpful, at least for me. I think individual results will vary.
Yeah. Our good friend Aaron Bush, this is like maybe this is a choose your favorite child thing, but which of your abilities is the strongest, or however you want to rank that?
I would err on the side of my ability to pick up emotions, whether they're from a living person, whether they are imprinted on a place. Emotional residue and data is some of the stuff that comes first. By the time I start talking about what I'm perceiving, it sounds very visual, but it's first these feels, and then those start to give me a sense of where to hone in. If a place feels like there's a lot of like heavy emotion, or it's like a sorrow or trauma, that's where I will start to focus to try to peel back the layers. But that sense for emotion is probably the strongest.
Okay. We're going to get into a heavy topic here in a little bit, but I understand we have a caller. This is Ronald from Minnesota. Ronald, welcome to Dead Air. You are on with Michelle Belanger.
Hey, Ken and George and Michelle, and I caught I was a little bit late tonight. I'm at the command center here.
Okay.
So I'm actually in New York right now, not in Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Anyway. It's Ron in the car? Okay, fine.
Well, no, I'm actually at Bill's house.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're probably one of the party guys. Okay, so what's up, Ron?
I want and I want to say happy Sunday to everybody and all the chat out there. Hello to you. And I know they're all giving me crap about my calling in, but anyway, here I am. And anyway, the question I have for Michelle is, do you think that the occult, you say occult researcher, you mean like how the religious aspect is dealing with the haunted or the ghost type phenomenon?
Well, occult being like any kind of, it's a blanket term for any kind of mysterious, hidden, or otherwise secret information. So magic falls into that, but so does voodoo, santeria, any of like the ritual practices that might be religion adjacent. I also do have a degree in comparative religious studies, but my focus even in that was what they call in academia NRMs, or new religious movements, which for many people get lumped under occult, because a lot of people don't differentiate between occult and a cult, even though those are two different things, coming from two different words. But we do sometimes, I think, have a bias toward things that are not recognizably like the big religions. So to simplify, occult researcher, if it is weird, magical, tied in with paranormal practices, superstitions, folkloric traditions, folk magic, any of that weird stuff, it falls under that umbrella.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you. You explained that very well, and thank you guys for the show tonight. Again, sorry I was late. I promise I won't be late again. Okay.
Okay, I hope not, because we got a stopwatch on you, pal.
That's right. You're logging every time I'm late, right?
That's right. We're docking you.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you, Michelle. Take care.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Wanted to move on to something else really quickly, and because this is something that I've been thinking about now for about 3 weeks. And George, you're welcome to pop in and join us. And I thought Michelle would be an excellent person to get into a discourse with. And this is actually the pending Roe v. Wade decision. Full disclosure, I'm outing myself. I am a pro-choice guy. Your experiences may differ, as Michelle said, and that's fine. But how I want to tie this into the tenor and tone of what we do here is that essentially at its root, they want to send this back to the people. In other words, states' rights, to let every state decide what it is that they want to do. My fear, or my concern, that's probably a better way to put it, is once this door is opened, they may come for a lot of people in this field. And I don't think I'm overreacting to it. Just for our viewers, hear me out. If they can do this, then this is not a political, this is a moral type of thing. So the LGBTQ community may be next. Wiccans may be next because they're not following Christian dogma and scripture. Voodooists, people who identify as witches, anything that they decide that doesn't fit into their worldview, it's all open season. So I think it's probably worth just talking about this. Now, Jackie Brewster said interracial couples may be next. Jackie, I mean, it's a good point. Basically, it's open season. And those of you out there, and I know that there are Wiccans, and, we are all inclusive here. We love you people. We embrace you. I mean, and, I hate to put it this way, but some of my best friends, people in our paranormal group, fall into all of those categories that I just mentioned. Every single one of them. Not by design, they're just good investigators. But they may come for you next. So Michelle, as somebody with, a toe in a lot of different pools here, I would love to get your thoughts on that as well. So the floor is yours.
Oh, I have so many thoughts about this. First, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I'm friends with several. And the biggest thing they are concerned about with this is what it leans into is about privacy and whether or not one has right to privacy and the right to make decisions about a whole lot of things. So it goes above and beyond whether or not a woman has control over her own body. And like that's a whole thing. I also live in Ohio where they just passed a bill in the House they can demand any child, and a child, if they're like, you're not girl enough. Oh, we're not sure if you belong in the boys' sports or the girls' sports, to go through invasive, like full on pelvic exam, blood draw, testing testosterone and hormone levels, but it's the pelvic exam, like on student athletes. Yeah, seriously, like they're requiring people to go get felt up. If anybody, adult, student, teacher, questions whether or not they're the gender they say they are. And the problem with that is it's left wide open of, if you're too butch, if you're too tall. I'm probably the only out openly intersex person in the paranormal on TV, especially. I might be the only intersex out person in like American TV. I don't know for sure. I know there's a lot of non-binary people, but in addition to my heart problems, I was born, I'm neither. If ever you're like, wow, that person's real tall, got really, really big shoulders, maybe that's, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm the exception. I don't fit in any of those boxes. I 100% would be the kid on the chopping block with that. But to move it from that, what has me the most, what has me honestly scared, and I don't get scared easily, is I started doing my work and my writing, getting my degrees, and doing any of the TV stuff during the Satanic Panic. I know what that was like.
Yep.
It had a palpable impact on my friend groups. I'm queer. I'm pagan. I, study the occult. I study demons. I very obviously do not fit in anything. I have been a black wearing freak since I was in my early teens. And I know how difficult they can make life for people like us.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds alarmist, but I've lived through it, where people lose their kids for no reason other than they're not Christian enough, where people lose their jobs for the same. I live in an at-will state. They can fire you for any freaking reason. And at this point, they have taken the mask off a little bit, and Christian nationalism is definitely part of the impetus behind a lot of these movements, trying to push these things into the states where they have very carefully ensconced and gerrymandered, so that there is this really genuinely terrifying movement trying to, I don't know, dial us back to. So are you aware in the leaked thing, Alito cites a lawmaker, Hale, from, frankly, during the witch craze. And this is a dude who literally put women to death for witchcraft. And this is the person whose opinions about what women are allowed to do with their bodies Alito is trying to bring forward. It is several hundred years out of date. Why anyone in their right mind, and the thing is, it's by design, because this is a person who his other legal statements are about how a woman is literally the property of her husband, that it is biblical law because she was made out of the rib of Adam, and therefore the man is the head of the woman doesn't, like, you were literally chattel. And that's white women, because they don't even assume anybody else. This is a person who, part of his legal stuff, this is Hale again, not Alito, but Alito, in citing him, very clearly is saying, this is a lawmaker I look up to. I am going to write 2022 law based off of this guy's opinions. He followed the rule of thumb, which was to say that you were allowed to beat your wife into submission with anything as long as it wasn't thicker than a man's thumb.
Yeah, or institutionalize or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, it can't be that bad. But in 2016, everybody was like, oh, no, it can't be that bad. And everything. Oh, no, they're not coming for Roe versus Wade. No. That won't happen. It's happening. So how many times do we have to say that it's happening? Do we get to a point where people aren't going to be like, oh, well, my bad. I just didn't think it would go there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as a student of history, it also is eerily reminiscent of the Weimar Republic in the 30s in Germany. And any student of history, I hope, has a pretty good idea of where that goes.
Right.
I didn't think in 2022 we would be reciting the first they came for the trans women and first they came for the but it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But to take it to the paranormal, as someone who not only lived through the Satanic Panic, but was a figure pushing back against it and educating against it, consulting with police in a few cases, consulting with colleges and academics. You'll find me in a whole bunch of books from the 90s, from Mick Mercer's Hex Files on down. This is a part of my career that you don't really get to see in the paranormal, and I don't go screaming it to the world because, frankly, I thought this time was over.
Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't fit what's considered right and proper and normal is on the chopping block.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredibly easy at that point to simply undermine everyone and saying, well, whatever you're doing is satanic. And it doesn't matter if you say it's not satanic. We say it's satanic, and therefore we will take your rights away. Therefore, you will go to jail.
Yep.
I mentioned Damien Eccles, and that was the same thing. Like, he was figuratively tarred and feathered and put, I cannot stress this enough, on death row for 20 years of his life because he was a disaffected 17-year-old. If you've watched Stranger Things 4, they based the character Eddie off of him.
Wow.
I saw.
My goodness.
I know that they did this, but the instant they were back at that trailer park house, I was like, holy crap, this is Damien. I mean, everybody who had studied this time period knows Damien's story, but they really show this kid and what he was into, and gaming and heavy metal, and actually, honestly, also some magic, also some vampirism. And those aren't necessarily things that make you a criminal. But in West Memphis, Arkansas, it absolutely did. And it didn't matter that they didn't have the evidence to prove and tie them. It didn't matter because as far as they were concerned, and as far as they were affirmed, the very fact that he was this sketchy kid was evidence enough. We are going there. It's terrifying.
It is. And again, relating it, relating it back to the paranormal. If you're a voodooist, if you identify as a witch, if you're a ghost hunter, the Bible clearly said not to commune with spirits. And we say, now you're going too far. As Michelle just eloquently said, we said the same thing about Roe v. Wade. Come down on that however you choose. You have that right, just as long as you make a compelling argument. But whether you're Wiccan, pagan, the door is open for anyone to decide that you don't fit in here. So this has far-reaching implications, which has been my concern for the last 3 weeks. As soon as, because like most of you, I grew up around very strong women, and I think of them as something more than just breeders for our culture. Okay. I mean, yes. So how do you, yeah, I just wanted to relate it back to anyone there. I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but if you think for a moment, yeah, well, that's just too, wait.
Yeah.
Honestly, is like look at the fact that there are book burnings. There are
Yeah.
literally people doing book burnings. Like, there is some terrifying stuff. It is a really bad sign, and I believe in the dream of America. Like, I was raised on, like, I get to decide who I am. I get to decide how I dress. I get to decide whether I worship or if I don't. Like, those are rights that I was brought up believing were my rights. That I get to decide if I'm going to have kids or not. Like, that should be my thing, that I can love who I want to love. And it is astounding to me that I'm standing here at nearly 50 going, how is this in question?
Yeah.
It is in question. Not that I know it all, by no means. I'm still learning this experience called life. But you see us going down the same rabbit hole again. You see us repeating the same mistakes that have been made since the inception of man. Nothing has evolved. We may have evolved with technology and medicine, but we have not evolved as a species. The only thing is, we live long enough to be hateful. We live long enough to be resentful and put the blame of our lot in life on somebody else. And this is, again, where the anger is ignited from. And people will blame whatever's going on in the world based upon this person or that person. I grew up in modern suburbia, kind of a scenario, pretty much white bread in New Jersey and then moving to Florida. So introduction to different races, different lifestyles, was, again, luckily for me, experiences through my travels, living in Germany for 3 years, living in Key West, which is predominantly gays environment. That you are opened up to. These are different lifestyles, and it's their lifestyles. They are not trying to convert you. They're not trying. This is just where those particular people with the right amount of connections, the right amount of influence, the right amount of money, and with their politics are going to get what they want, or they are going to use that platform to ignite and inspire those people of hate. And it doesn't seem to be diminishing in any capacity. It actually seems to be growing more and more and more. And I know we want to come around back to this question again, Ken. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's got to be. This hit me really hard when you were talking about being an energy vampire. And there are children out there who have been victim of one of these shootings that have been going on. Uvalde being the most recent when it pertained to children. What that child, who maybe is an energy vampire or an empath, was going through in the midst of that. And it shouldn't be happening in today's day and age. These things should not be happening. And people will fight when they go to the NRA conventions and say it's mental illness. We have too many doors on our schools. We are not locking the doors on our schools. Well, we got windows, so shoot through that. I mean, have some common sense. But we are dealing with an era right now that is on the potential to fracture our country. I mean, I don't want to sound so ominous about it, but it's a terrifying thought. Does it
I
affect
think
me
that
day to day? No,
yeah.
but I see it down the line.
No, if you know anything about history, it's impossible not to like look at what's unfolding and go, we are in trouble.
Yeah.
We are at the very least on a precipice. But honestly, I kind of think that we're halfway down, realizing that we did take that final step, and we're like, yeah, and like, I don't
Yeah.
really
I
like
think
the
what
idea.
we have to bear in mind is that when we always are looking for a boogeyman and blame it on the others, it's like, folks, anybody who has less institutional power than you do is not the cause of your problems.
Bingo.
Okay.
So also to bring it back to the paranormal, because this is something I've really been sitting with. As someone who worked with Lorraine Warren, got a chance to talk with Lorraine Warren, but also, I'm not going to mince words, the Warrens may not have intentionally fed into the satanic panic, but the Warrens absolutely enabled parts of it.
Yes.
With their ideology.
I think that's fair.
Like Lorraine Warren was absolutely, and I hate to say it like this, but she was a product of her time and her environment. I have no doubt, having worked with her, that she truly believed her interpretations of things. Like every tarot deck was a portal for spirits. Every Ouija board was a portal for the devil to come through. Like she firmly believed this. But their popularity, and they're seeing demons and possession everywhere, and that becoming like really building off of the pop culture popularity and terror of The Exorcist in 1973. Like these things are not unrelated. And I've been looking and doing some introspection with this sort of renaissance of the paranormal over the past couple of decades, and how it keeps like suddenly it's like it's demons, and there are definitely people who are like, yes, it's demons are everywhere, Satan is corrupting everyone, and it's not a far throw at that point to see that demons have subsumed everyone you disagree with, and then take the step to like harvesting babies for adrenochrome, which is such a flashback. I did my undergrad thing on the witch craze and women and Shakespeare and like some of the things that you see from the sociological stuff that was going on then. And some of the conspiracy theories that are like really driving some of this stuff, it's just a repackaging of there are these witches and they are gathering in the woods and they are harvesting babies to make candles from their fat. It's the same thing. Like it hits the same places to talk about like the different symbols and the themes and the archetypes. Like we've come back around to this thing, and societies around the globe that find themselves at a certain point of social and economic unrest consistently will devolve into what after the fact looks like this incomprehensible hysteria, like that we can't figure out how that many people went that far off the rails. But it comes down to a desperate need to have someone to blame. And we are all in Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So much to think about.
Yeah.
And for those of viewers here, I mean, we have some very loyal people here. We love them. They communicate with us off the air.
Yes.
They get emails and messages, and you know who you are. We appreciate every one of you. But there are, as I said, far-reaching implications to this that might go in a direction you're not expecting right now. And we could talk about the LGBTQ rights. We can talk about marriage rights. We can talk about interracial couples. We can talk about all of that. But when you get into our particular area of our little hobby here, we're not exempt. We're not exempt from any of this because many of us live in this kind of, it's a really bad word because I don't know what alternative lifestyle is. It's just a lifestyle. But the fringe elements, as they are labeled, a lot of us live that. It doesn't define who we are. We're doing other things too, but we're kind of immersed in this. We have an interest, you know. So everything's on the table, folks, with this kind of thing. So however you feel about major issues, just understand that it can reach any of us if it comes down to the states get to decide this. If you live in a particularly conservative state and they decide that we don't want you to be a witch or a pagan or a Wiccan or a voodooist or an energy vampire or a whatever, a ghost hunter, because you're communing with spirits, hey, they're burning books in 2022. So please, you know, you spare me it can't happen here. It can't.
It seems extraordinary. And I know for us, it's become normalized of like, well, no, we're talking to spirits. Like we're on this like intellectual quest from the most extreme sects of Christianity. Any spirit that you deal with here and now is demonic. Period. The end. Like there is no allowance for anything that persists here and now from these viewpoints. And these are the viewpoints that are really pushing to have dominance and control and no separation of church and state. So right. It's important. I said earlier, like if we are doing any of this, like it really behooves us to understand different points of view and to study different religious beliefs and to study different like folklore and mythology. But this is part of that. Like what do these people believe? Because right now that's very relevant for what are they going to ask us to not do? Right. What are they going to project upon us? Like if it really comes down to these are people who want to control what others are doing, and expand their judgment on other people's private lives and have put enough time, effort, and money into positioning themselves to where they get to make the laws.
Right.
What will they do? And you have to look at what are their beliefs. If they're taking their beliefs as what they want to impose as law, it really behooves you to look into that. And some of the best people to find are the folks who were part of those religions who are no longer, who are like, this is what I was raised in. And then I realized that Black people were really people, and maybe we were wrong.
Right.
But
I mean,
isn't it?
I just want to finish one thought, George, please excuse me, but a place like Lilydale may be fine in upstate New York, but what about a place like Casadega in Florida, a spiritualist community?
Oh yeah, wow. Because Florida's getting just spooky, and not the good type of spooky.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to hit that real quick.
Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny though that it is yet to be, and only because I think it is in its infant stages, this growing animosity. But isn't it funny that people don't realize how venomous and viral that this could be? Because right now we're saying us versus them. And the interesting part of it is that those who are being targeted right now in the us category, and I'm not saying I'm part of that, but I'm just using those two comparisons. Those people who are pointing the fingers, you never know, 5 years, 10 years down the line, something of your lifestyle, and all of a sudden you're crossed the line to the other side, and they're pointing the fingers at you also. Be it again something that you are involved in hobby wise, your lifestyle, your income bracket, your geographical location, where you are no longer acceptable to that top tier group of people who are making these decisions. You think about going back once again to Uvalde and somebody there that is extremely pro gun that may have lost a child and now wants to know why this 18-year-old was able to purchase this weapon of mass destruction, this horrible war weapon on his birthday, have it mailed to him, and then go on a shooting rampage, may now be having second thoughts about that. But you were in this category the day before. Now you're in this category. And if you now speak up against guns, you may now all of a sudden find yourself with your back against the wall. Again, this is going to be so fluidic and constantly changing. And who's to say when it's going to come to a head, if it even will? But people are always talking about, two sides, civil war kind of thing. This is always going to be transitional, always going to be transitional. So I'm worried to see what the future brings for us.
Boy, how about
including
those
in this
Celtics, huh?
Yeah, what I will say is, like, Stranger Things 4 hits really, really hard.
Doesn't it?
Really hard.
Best season.
Because it's fantastic, and the homages and the call-outs, but it is so accurately, the first couple of episodes especially, like that whole satanic panic thing, like I was crawling in my skin because I was like, oh God, I know where this is going. Like I lived this.
Yeah. And again, the same thing with the high school kids that were being bullied and are the bullies, and what they were dealing with and their own demons at that point in time. I was not expecting that for this season. It's been absolutely fantastic. But
it's brilliant. It is brilliant. It is timely. It is a gut punch. The call outs, like I also have like the bingo card of like, oh, Carrie, oh, there's that, there's it, there's that Hannibal recreation, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street, oh my God, they got so I've loved it, by the way. And
can we before we do leave tonight, there's a I thought that was the elephant in the room, but here's another one. Here's the baby elephant in the room.
Okay.
It's a question, and then I want to kind of expound on this a little bit. Alice in Winterland. I'm sorry, good handle. Question: psychic vampirism is about involuntary energy exchanges, right? Okay, before I flesh that out, why don't you address that first?
This is why the first book that I published by a third-party publisher was the Psychic Vampire Codex. So psychic vampirism is a capacity some people have. Most of the people that you imagine of folks you have to protect yourself against probably are not conscious about what they're doing. It's not to say that there aren't a few bad apples that totally know what they're doing and leverage it to take energy from people. But to be a psychic vampire does not mean that you are necessarily a predator. It is simply one more way of relating to energy. For me, it is inextricable from my psychic abilities. I have a particular way of connecting to and interacting with energy. Most of my training as a young person was learning to get a handle on this so that I would only engage consensually with people. And I am the person who wrote the ethical guidelines for an entire worldwide community of folks who identify as psychic vampires to encourage people to do this intentionally, responsibly, and only with people who agree to do it as an exchange. When it's done consensually, it's not an attack. It's just you share energy, everything's fine. The hilarious thing is like we don't have context for this over here in our culture. I had a good friend who was first generation Chinese American. I was picking his brain. I'm like, do you with your energy work, do you have a term for psychic vampire? He's like, no, you have low chi, you have high chi, you sit together, you share chi, everybody's fine. Like, it's no biggie. So some of the spookiness is just using the word vampire, but we don't have a good word for somebody who takes this vital energy.
Okay,
I know
so-
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but this is my train of thought on this. All of us have said this at one point or another about another person. That person is just sucking the life out of me.
Mm-hmm.
They're sucking the energy out of me. You know, when you sit down with somebody that you don't really want to be with, or they're droning on, similar to what George and I do on this program. It's just droning on. And maybe they're going in a direction just is like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? And you just, or they bring you a lot of drama. That's probably the best example. And you say, that person is just sucking the life on, they're sucking the energy out of me. So is this really, with our own sensitivity, is this really as far-fetched as some people want to make it out to be? Oh, you're energy vampire. It's like, in a lot of instances, we all can be to a certain degree. Maybe we don't recognize it, or is that just a real false equivalency there?
No. So the thing is by my beliefs, and I think that this bears out, like we all are constantly exchanging energy with one another, with our environment. Like there is just a flux and flow. Most of us think of ourselves as psychic, but I can guarantee everybody's like walked into a room where two people were having an argument. They might not be in that room anymore, but you feel the tension. Like there's something that we pick up on. We get these senses when we interact with people that like, this person makes my skin crawl. This person has bad vibes. We have a lot of different language for how we kind of rationalize the awareness to ourselves. And again, we don't think of it as psychic, because it's actually normal. Like it's just part of our human experience.
Yeah, I mean,
only thing that sets vampire aside is the quantity, like the regular amount of which they generally need to take with people. Sometimes it's because they have a chronic illness. Sometimes it's something that they're just, but it's not that. I have no idea where the music came from.
It's just like, I don't know. He had some kind of walk-up music there or something.
There we go. Well, again, we're out of time. Unfortunately, it went so damn quickly, and
this was great.
Michelle, we cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight. And guys, thank you guys for joining us as usual. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget also the thumbs up and the reminder bell. Michelle, stay with us on the line. We're going to head and close out, but we'll be back with you guys next week. You've been watching Dead or Alive on the Dead or Full Spectrum channel. Have a great night. See you next week.